Okay, alright. Assalamualaikum, konnichiwa. Assalamualaikum and good day to everyone. Welcome to Sendai 2030 DPPC webinar series on strengthening urban resilience in the World Heritage Sites, learning from both the Japanese and Malaysian experience, hosted by Disaster Preparedness and Prevention Center, DPPC, Malaysian Japan International Institute of Technology, MJIT, University of Technology Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, and jointly organized by Georgetown World Heritage Incorporated. We would like to thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Dr. Siti Ruzaria Muhammad Tabi, Deputy Director of Disaster Preparedness and Prevention Center, and I will be the moderator as for today. We hope that today's sharing will be fun, interesting, and rewarding to everyone who's joining us here today. So anyway, I would like to first welcome all the panels. We have Professor Dr. Tokiyuki Okubo. We have from American University. We have Dr. Ang Ming Chi from Georgetown World Heritage Incorporated, and also we have Madam Asinda Muhammad Hamran from DID, and I want to also welcome Dato Engineer Sabri Abdul Muluk, Director of Mitigation Department from NADMA. And also together here with us is Dr. Kamarul Azhari, Deputy Director of DPPC as well. So welcome to all panels and special guests for today webinars. So just a little reminder before we start, if you have any question during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your Zoom control panel, and as well for those who watch from Facebook page, from the DPPC Facebook page, you can leave your question on the comment, and I will bring them up during the presentation, and we will have a Q&A session at the end of the panel presentation. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to Professor Technologist Dr. Ali Slamat, Dean of Malaysian Japan International Institute of Technology, University of Technology Malaysia, for his opening remarks. Please welcome Prof. University of Technology Malaysia for his opening remarks. Please welcome Prof. University of Technology Malaysia for his opening remarks. Please welcome Prof. University of Technology Malaysia for his opening remarks.
Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, my dear friends of science, technology and innovation. Distinguished Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning. My dear friends, thank you very much for being with us and innovation. Today, distinguished, I'm pleased to welcome you to Sendai and good morning. My dear, thank you very heritage sites, learning from the Japanese and Malaysian experience. This webinar is in conjunction with Georgetown World Heritage Day, which is set on 7th July each year, and to commemorate its 13 years as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. We gather virtually here in this webinar with the aims to build up scientific knowledge, innovation, and to strengthen understanding to effectively plan recovery and rehabilitate with the aims of build back better concept. Ladies and gentlemen, today is the day for all of us to reflect on the importance of the intangible culture and wealth of Penang. The state of Penang takes full pride in its rich cultural diversity, in sustaining and also implementing disaster risk reduction strategy in the heritage city of Georgetown. We all understand the importance of science, technology, and innovation in our day-to-day lives as the ways in which they are transforming the world. If this was not clear earlier, it is blindingly obvious now. In the time of any disaster, science, technology, and innovation are indispensable for our response to and recovery from any disaster. In preparing Penang to be a resilient state, We will explore some of the best practices from Japan, exchange our values, and rethink our future strategies to better respond, to recover, and prevent future risks, especially in the World Heritage Sites. The webinar will cover the mainstreaming of disaster risk reduction into development planning, promoting and understanding the risk-informed investment, and strengthening urban resilience as a result of climate-induced disaster in a changing environment. And this is not just another scientific webinar. It is where policymakers, city planners, disaster managers, professionals, practitioners, civil society organizations, researchers, and also civil society come together so that we all can acquire additional knowledge related to strengthening urban resilience to natural hazards, building societal resilience, and rejuvenating strategies to prevent future disaster risks in a changing climate. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that by participating in this webinar, we are in the right place and the right time. Together, let us accelerate the exchange of ideas and scaling up good practices in disaster mitigation and management. I'm confident that you will find new ideas, fresh energy, and novel partnerships to sustain your efforts in support of sustainable development goals and recovery from natural or man-made hazards through science, innovation, and education. I would also like to congratulate Disaster Preparedness and Prevention Center, Malaysia Japan International Institute of Technology, University Technology Malaysia, and Georgetown World Heritage Incorporated for organizing this webinar. It is hoped this webinar brings a fruitful discussion of new ideas and best practices on managing urban resilience in the World Heritage Sites that we could learn from Japanese and Malaysian experience. Let us keep on doing good work in keeping our heritage alive and in preparing Penang to be a resilient state by learning from each other's experience. With that, I wish you all a very successful webinar and thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Technologist Dr. Ali Selamat, Dean of Malaysian Japan International Institute of Technology, for the opening remarks. Today, we also have our invited guest. It is Associate Professor Dr. Suhail Matsura. So we will invite him as JICA expert, Japan International Cooperation Agency, to give his introductory remarks. So Associate Professor Dr. Suhail Matsura, the virtual floor is yours.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Shohei Matsura. Thank you for the introduction, Dr. Siti Zaria. I'm a JICA expert attached to MJIT UTM. I would like to first welcome and give my sincere thanks to Professor Dr. Takayuki Okubo, Director, Institute of Disaster Mitigation for Urban Cultural Heritage of Ritsumeikan University in Japan. Ms. Haslinda Muhammad Haman, Senior Assistant Director, Flood Management Division, Department of Irrigation and Drainage, Malaysia, and our MDRM alumni, one of our best students, and Dr. Ang Ming Chi, General Manager of Georgetown World Heritage Incorporated. Again, I would like to welcome and thank you all for providing your experiences and inputs to this webinar. Personally, I would like to give extra thanks to Professor Okubo, who has supported our MDRM program over several years already, accepting our MDRM students in Kyoto and teaching them about disaster risk reduction and in cultural heritage sites through lectures and the field visit. During the Under the Burning Sun of Kyoto, we usually implement this program in July. So thank you, Professor. Coming back to Malaysia, in my previous visits to Georgetown, Penang, I have learned about the difficulties of disaster risk reduction in a World Heritage City. For example, while normally, in a flood-prone area in Penang, the draining system could be upgraded to prevent flooding. But in Georgetown, because the draining system itself has a historical value, they cannot be easily redesigned or upgraded. And these issues I myself had similar experiences working in DR projects in Asian capital of Hue and Hoi An in Vietnam, for example. Both are UNESCO World Heritage sites and very flood-prone areas. And also some cultural heritage sites in Northeast Japan in the areas that were devastated by the 2011 East Japan earthquake and tsunami. I hope that Prof. Okubo can showcase some of these examples from Kyoto and Japan, and maybe from his various research projects in his institute. These lessons can be shared with our stakeholders in Malaysia. I would like to also mention about our current COVID-19 experiences, which has been showing us that cooperation among various stakeholders is vital when disaster risk reduction becomes complex and multi-sectoral, such as flooding under the pandemic. We just had a seminar on COVID-19 and disaster risk reduction, a webinar organized with DPPC and the Japan Embassy and JICA, where we kind of ended up suggesting that we cannot just stick with our traditional DR stakeholders to do the disaster management work, but we might also require various non-traditional stakeholders in disaster risk reduction. Perhaps in our topic today, we may need to discuss working with people such as historians or experts in the tourism sector as well. Just so that we remember that disaster risk reduction in cultural heritage sites is not only about physical heritage, but also intangible heritage that could include local knowledge or local experiences in disaster risk reduction, where normally in traditional cities, the communities owns these kind of knowledge. So we must work with them as well. In this light, JICA has attempted to organize a workshop about 2 years ago, I believe, with Ms. Hatlinda and her colleagues at DID in Penang, but unfortunately it was postponed due to COVID-19. But I understand that UNESCO organized such international conference in 2015 in Georgetown, I think right after the Sendai conference. Well, when this COVID situation is over, we wish to revitalize and replicate this kind of effort. Just to share with you, MGIT with JICA, NACMA, and Asian Disaster Reduction Center in Kobe had organized an international webinar on strengthening local DR strategies, where Penang Green Agenda was highlighted as the case study for Malaysia. JICA is also with NACMA and DPPC currently conducting a survey on local DR capacities in 5 target areas, including Penang, hopefully to identify new DR projects in research activities. Lastly, MGIT also hosts the ASEAN Office for Japan ASEAN Science and Technology Innovation Platform, JASTIP for short. And one of our key research topics in the disaster prevention sector is, in fact, DR and cultural heritage. So we might utilize this avenue for activities as well. I would like to end by giving my hopes. Hopefully the discussions today will become one of the inputs to these ongoing efforts in building new partnerships and for planning future activities for making cultural heritage sites more resilient to disasters, and of course, achieving the goals of the Sendai framework. I thank you all again and wish you all a fruitful Wednesday morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Associate Professor Dr. Syed Matsura, for the introductory remarks. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, as we today celebrate our Georgetown World Heritage City Day at 7 July 2021, I'm going to brief you a little bit about Georgetown World Heritage City Day. So, enlisted as a UNESCO World Cultural Heritage Site in 2008, Georgetown is the epitome of Penang as more than just a capital city. So on the 7th July 2008, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, officially designated the World Heritage status to Georgetown, the capital city of Penang. Therefore, July 7 is intended for all citizens and visitors to celebrate the history and culture of Georgetown as a heritage site. In acknowledgement of this memorable designation, Penang's government officially announced July 7 as Georgetown World Heritage Day, making it as a state holiday for all Penang citizens. So therefore, since 2008, Georgetown Heritage Celebration to honor Georgetown as UNESCO World Heritage Site has been organized for several continuous days in the inner city of Georgetown. As the second most inhabited city in Malaysia, is known to be prone to various natural hazards, namely floods, landslide, coastal erosion, typhoons, as well as technological and industrial hazards. Adding to this, rapid urbanization and extreme weather are also inflicting broader development issues with underlying risk factors which contribute to environmental degradation. As a result, revitalizing DRR resilient strategies are critical for making cities more sustainable, equitable, and resilient to future disaster risks. So today, in commemoration of Georgetown on its 13 years UNESCO World Heritage Sites, we gather virtually today for this webinar on strengthening urban resilience in the World Heritage Sites, learning from both the Japanese and Malaysian experience as an effort in preparing Georgetown to be a resilient city. So before we begin with the next session, I would like to introduce all our invited speakers for today. So our first speaker will be Professor Dr. Tokeki Okubo, Director of Institute of Disaster Mitigation for Urban Cultural Heritage at Sumekan University. He became an associate professor of Kyoto University in 2002 and then a professor at the Graduate School and College of Science and Engineering with Sumekan University in 2007 and also become the director at the Institute of Disaster Mitigation for Urban Cultural Heritage in 2013. He is also a member of ICOP, board member of JP ICOMOS and ICOMOS International. His background is in civil engineering, architecture, and global environmental engineering inform his current research interests in urban design for disaster mitigation and architectural design, which promote the utilization of traditional knowledge and as well environment. Following to that, our second speaker is Madam Haslinda Meti Muhammad Hamran, Senior Assistant Director in the Flood Management Division, Department of Irrigation and Drainage Malaysia, DID. Her first attachment was as an engineer in DID Penang that covers Special Project Unit, Corporate and Human Development Unit, Flood Mitigation and River Management Unit, as well as Coastal Management Unit. And then promoted as District Engineer in both Northeast District and Southeast District in Penang Island for almost 6 years. Due to her diligence, determination, hardworking, work committed in her role as a District Engineer, and successfully delivered the first outfall project in Malaysia, which are the Feringhi River Outfall and Satu River Outfall, that managed to solve the pollution and river mouth problem. Therefore, the state government of Penang, with the conjunction of 78th birthday of Penang Governor, has conferred Madam Haslinda binti Muhammad Hamran with Pingat Jasa Kebaktian, PJK, awarded in 2016. Later, she was promoted and transferred to Flood Management Division, Department of Irrigation and Drainage, Malaysia in 2017. And our final special speaker will be Dr. Ang Ming Chi, the General Manager of Georgetown World Heritage Incorporated, GTWHI. She is known as the first accredited facilitator for UNESCO Global Network of Facilitators on Intangible Cultural Heritage in Malaysia. Together with a team of 35 committed professionals, GTWHI was established by the state government of Penang to manage, conserve, and promote the World Heritage Site and serve as the UNESCO World Heritage Site Manager. With that, thank you to all speakers for joining us today. We are also so glad to have you here virtually to share your insight, expertise, experience, and knowledge with us. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Professor Dr. Takeyuki for his presentation. So please welcome, Prof.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Siti. So at first, I'd like to express my deepest gratitude for Professor Ali Seramato as Dean of Malaysia Japan International Institute of Technology, University Technology Malaysia, and also the Professor Karamal Azari, and also the Siti Uzaira-san. And also Dr. Shohei Matsura as JICA expert, Japan International Cooperation Agency, and Georgetown World Heritage Incorporated, Dr. Amici, and all the persons who support this very important conference as a supporter. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very looking forward to sharing your very important information and experience with Japan and also the Malaysia. So today, may I share my screen? Yeah. Okay. Just a moment. Yeah, today, so I would like to discuss about disaster risk management with community involvement and also the traditional knowledge from the case of Japan. Maybe so I hope this can be helpful for your some reference. So you already know, so in the case of especially in the case of the serious disaster, like earthquake or tsunami or flood and something. So for establishment of this disaster risk management plan with the peoples living in should be indispensable because when we try to save the cultural heritage, so we should save the people who support the culture itself. Should be very important, so as that for building the safe and beautiful region for future, student participation should be indispensable. For that, so to build up the disaster risk management plan for the heritage site, we believe that the citizens' workshop for risk assessment and risk communication is fundamental. For that purpose, we, as Japanese government, recently tried to help this kind of the workshop with the local people for building the resilient historic district for future generations. So today, I would like to share the experience as a case study in Kiragawa district. So I'm sorry, so this Kiragawa is just one of the historic district designated by the cultural affairs of Japanese government. So it's not, unfortunately, it is not a World Cultural Heritage Site, but similarly, so we always help this kind of the workshop for various types of historic district. Okay, so this is, I'm sorry, so this is the outline of this Kiragawa district. And so in this is the Pacific Ocean. And because of that, so every summer season, they have frequently the typhoon attack, and sometimes because of the big earthquake, this district also faces the risk of tsunami. And behind of these villages, they have a very steep mountains. So as that, so sometimes it's suffered by the flood and also the landslide. So you already know that. So Japan, most of the Japanese historic district is always face various types of risk. So as that, it can be referable maybe for us Japanese and also Malaysian peoples. And in this district, this is here is just at the foot of the mountains. So as that, they have some basement built by the round-shaped rock traditionally to make this to stabilize the ground conditions using the traditional knowledge. And also, they have some fire proof building, traditional fire-proof buildings, which is covered by the soil. Originally, those buildings are built by wood and paper, but to protect from fire. So our ancestors tried to put the mud plaster on the surface of the buildings. It's a kind of the character of this district. And to build up the disaster risk management plan for this historic district, we held two types of workshop with the local peoples. The type one is workshop with disaster mitigation game. So it's a kind of the indoor workshop. And after that, we try to summarize the outcomes of the disaster imagination game to make a map. And after that, so we choose the menu of field drills from the outcomes. And on the field drill, we try to practice about the possible measures from the outcomes of the disaster imagination game. So those kind of the cyclic process of workshop with local people should be a fundamental base for developing the disaster risk management plan. Okay, today I would like to show the brief outlines of this process of workshops. So disaster imagination game called just a dig. So it's a meaning that so dig up some important ideas and also share the disaster risk with a group of peoples. And this is the example of disaster imagination game training held by Kyoto Fire Department. And for understanding the risk of by the disaster from the viewpoint of the local people, we make a flowchart as a scenario of possible disaster situations. In the case of this district, maybe the earthquake should be very important disasters to check out. And after that, so we try to think about the fire possibility and was it possible to respond with a quick way with the local people and how to do in a scene of the spreading fire and evacuations. And in the same times, we should think about the case of tsunami after serious earthquake. So as that we also try to think about the possibility of evacuation from tsunami in the same times. So those photos shows the actual conditions of this workshop using the very big scale map to share the information from the viewpoint of the local people. And today, I'm sorry, so the time is very limited. So as that I just show you about some brief outcomes of this workshop. And after the disaster imagination game workshop, we can get this kind of the map which show the actual conditions in detail from the opinions of local peoples. And you can see the red color tag against each case of the disaster. And blue color tag, it shows some ideas coming from the participant as local people and also the local government persons and voluntary fire brigade and so on. So through this workshop, we can get a very detailed risk map or hazard map, not only coming from the scientific viewpoint, but also coming from the local viewpoint and also the history. And after that, we held a field drill for practical solutions after the needs assessment for items of field drill with so ankit research for to the local peoples. And so this is a summary of field drill for extracting further issues and measures. The training program that was requested in the questionnaire after disaster imagination game workshop was practiced. So after the questionnaire, so most of the people want to try to use the fire extinguisher by themselves. And very fortunately, they have so many firefighting water cisterns in the underground. But at that time, most of the local people doesn't know where, and also they also doesn't know how to use it at that time. So as that we tried to help to check the possibility of utilization of underground cistern water for quick fire controls. And on the right photographs, you can see the people who are ongoing on the way to the evacuation. So on the process, so they try to call for the elder person or some disabled peoples who have the challenges to quick evacuate. So they can check about the possibility of some ideas for measures coming from the disaster imagination game on the field. And also they can check again the possibility of measures, and also they can also find more detailed challenges and problems through this on-site drills. And this is an additional map which have more information about the challenges and also the measures. So I'm sorry, so it's written in Japanese, but if I have a chance, so I would like to translate it for your reference. And after that, we have 14 of disaster mitigation measures, policies from the result of those workshops. Of course, this is just one type of a process, but so we should do this kind of the process year by year or 2 year by 2 years. So because you know the challenges of disaster should be changed day by day, and the condition, social condition also change day by day. And so as that we should keep this kind of the process, cyclic process, for more suitable and adaptable measures in actual social conditions. So now I would like to show you about each of the 14 disaster mitigation measures policies coming from this Kiragawa workshop. The first one, sorry, so is the sorry, so that's my screen covers the title. Just a moment, please. Anyhow, so okay, so various systems that enable disaster response even in the daytime and being developed, such as women's fire prevention clubs or self-defense fire department at business company, and a citizens rescue team for cultural heritage. So we need to think about how to support the disaster activity, disaster mitigation activities, even in the case of the daytimes. Most of the areas, villages, in the daytimes, the young person should go for the outside of the villages for their work, jobs. So, but maybe most of the disaster doesn't wait for us. So sometimes it occurs in daytimes also. So we should think about how to support the organization, local organization for control the emergency situations, even in the case of the daytimes. And we show the examples as a self-defense team of housewives in Nagoya City. So in the case of Nagoya City, some volunteer people support these housewives to get the knowledge and also the skills to help the injured persons or checking the risk of fire and so on. And second one is okay, so anyhow, sorry. So in the case of historic district, sometimes we have so many elder persons who have challenges to quick evacuate and so on. So there is a list of elderly people, but it cannot be shared among residents due to the personal information. It's a serious problem in the case of Japan. And so it is necessary to pay attention to the handling of personal information and create and share a list of vulnerable people in the area. So here is an example in the Kanagawa, Yokohama City. They have a list of volunteer vulnerable people after the town walking and map making and research of vulnerable persons on the process, and shares a mutual support card in between the vulnerable peoples and the neighbor supporters. So they don't need to share the whole of the personal information within the whole of the areas. They just share the important information in between the vulnerable people and supporters. So we should think about this kind of the systems for withstand the keeping the personal information and also the emergency response. The next one is reversible nameplate. Yeah, each evacuate need to evacuate while checking whether the neighborhood already evacuated or not. Especially in the case of March 11 tsunami in 2011 in Tohoku, Japan, it took much time to check all of the residential house because anybody know how many people are stay until now or not. So if all the residents can evacuate with a sign plate to notify the completion of evacuation, the time for checking can be saved. So, and I show the example in the Edogawaku in Tokyo area. So it is the case of the mansions, and all mansions have their name card, but it was made by the magnet plate. So when the people who living in the room completely evacuate, they can turn to the back, turn this nameplate to the back side. It shows, so we already completed to evacuate. So it can save the time to search the people by the fire department people and so on. And next one is so tourists for evacuation measures for tourists, for group tourists visiting by sightseeing bus and so on. So a tourist guide can support the evacuation. So it is very important to carry out the evacuation training for tourist guide in the future, especially in the case of the World Cultural Heritage cities like Georgetown also. So we have an example from the Wakayama city. In that case, they held a joint evacuation drill by tourism association and surfing federations. It's a volunteer organizations. So because most of the surfer well known about the condition of the sea after the tsunami or typhoon and so on, so as that they help those kind of the drills year by year with local people and also the tourist guide in the same times. And next one is making the sign for evacuation. So especially in the case of tsunami or flood. So by printing disaster prevention information in the tourist map, then so tourist information and disaster prevention information can be provided at the same time. So in the most case, we have only the map with the information for the tourist. But so most of the tourists doesn't know and not so familiar with each local site. So if we can put those emergency information in the tourist map, it should be more useful for the emergency situation. And if the evacuation direction sign is installed on the street corner, especially for the flood disaster and also the tsunami disasters, even tourists can find the evacuation direction quickly. And the example shows the map making by children in Kochi city and also the signboard designed by the high school in Wakayama. And of course, we should think about the designs more carefully because sometimes the design should be more visible, but from the viewpoint of the cultural landscape. So we should harmonize those design in the original townscape. So it is a challenge until now. And next one is the enforcement of the some special route. So in the disaster prevention drill, the effective idea was pointed out to use the sightseeing route even when evacuating for visitors. So, and for the purpose, prioritizing fire and earthquake prevention of traditional houses, storehouses, and Ishiguro walls, those are the very important characteristics of this Kiragawa area along the evacuation routes can also protect the value of cultural properties from disasters. So if we can share the emergency evacuation route with the major sightseeing route, so it should be quite important to withstand the cultural heritage preservation and also keep the safety of the important route for evacuation activities. And next one is also the rehabilitation of traditional Ishiguro walls. Aged Ishiguro and block walls can be barriered in the event of earthquake, causing accidents due to the road blockage and collapse. So repair the Ishiguro protect evacuation route, human lives, and also the protect cultural value in the same times. This Ishiguro walls is a very important, a part of the very important cultural landscape of this Kiragawa district. But because of the decade, sometimes it faces a risk of collapse. So if we can repair carefully those traditional walls, not only for the cultural value, but also for the people's safety. And next one is Kasagi Mountains as a tsunami disaster prevention base. So they have a small park in the mountain, and it can be used as the evacuation base against the tsunami disasters. So, and But unfortunately, until now, they don't have any major project to develop this site more safety. So in near future, so if we can put some installing the evacuation guidelines on the route, or repair the existing old water tank for backup water resources in the emergency situations. And also we need the trimming of the mountain trees because the condition is, if the mountain condition is not so good, you know, so sometimes it's can be a trigger of landslide. So if we can utilize those trees materials for traditional use, then so it can be more better for even for the risk management. And next one is traditional shrines and temples as a disaster prevention base. So later, so I would like to express about these examples more in detail using the case of Tohoku tsunami disasters. And so it is very important to establish the base that are familiar to the local residents of the daily basis. And so because then, so most of the people already know about the site, and so as that everybody can easy to understand where to go, even in the case of the emergency situations. And in this, in the case of this Kiragawa district, on the Hachimangu Shrine can be used as a primary evacuation site for local residents and also for tourists. So those are very famous shrines or temples, sometimes also very well known by the visitors. So it can be very easy, even for the tourists, to go there. But to tell the truth, of course, the torii gate or main shrine buildings and lanterns and other items are changed into the earthquake resistance structures. Otherwise, so it can make another danger for the evacuees. But anyhow, so I'd like to show you the exact examples from the case of Tohoku later. And next one is utilize resources as vacant house or open space in the historic district. So in the case of Japan, so unfortunately, there are so many vacant houses in the historic district. So when renovating those vacant houses or open spaces, it is desirable to renovate to be used as a base for communication and disaster prevention and tourism. And in the case of Fukuoka district, it's a Ukiha historic district designated by the national government. They use traditional just open space to set community base with the emergency equipment as firefighting and meetings and so on. So if we have vacant houses or spaces, so we should think about the possibility to update those resources as disaster risk management measures. And next one is patrolling of street parking. So because in most case of historic district in Japan, and so as that if some illegal parking car are located on the narrow street, it can be a barrier for evacuation or firefighting activities by the fire engines. So they said that for evacuation through the footpath field and mountain road to Mount Kasagi and other bases, it is necessary to remove weed and obstacle from the usual times. And next one is also the utilize of the traditional resources. So underground well. So regenerate and utilize the traditional common wells as emergency water resources. It is also possible to make wells as tourism resources. So originally, so most of the old villages or districts use natural water as underground well or mountain stream and so on. And after the modernization, we have the freshwater city network. So as that in most cases, they have the, traditional water resources. So as that it is quite important to activate those water resources, especially after the serious disasters like earthquake or flood or tsunami, and it make problems to the city water network, modern city water networks. So as that, if we can renovate those traditional water resources, a part of the risk management and also that to maintain the community network around the water resources. It should be quite useful for future. And the next one is also the resources. Most of the residents did not know the status of local water resources. So we should check those the conditions on a daily basis. So damage can be reduced if all the local residents are aware of these locations and the situations on a circulation board and so on. So it can be more helpful to keep the condition of possible resources for emergency situation. And the next one is the drills. So we already know it is very difficult for residents to spend time just for disaster prevention activities because it is not so funny and most of the people doesn't have so motivation to participate those emergency drills. So by carrying out disaster prevention activities in daily life, and the burden on residents can be reduced. For example, so conducting those disaster prevention drills within a traditional event or festivals. In the case of Kyoto, sometimes maybe do you know the I don't know whether so you know about the very famous festival as Gion Matsuri Festival in Kyoto. Sometimes they try to utilize portable pumping system to spray the water in the hot summer to clean up the surface of the road for Gion Matsuri festivals. And it can be, of course, it can be traditional activities, but it can also be an opportunity to check and utilize portable pumping systems for emergency situations. Okay, so now I have 10 and 15 more minutes, so I would like to share with you the experience of Tohoku. I would like to show you about cases around the historic buildings and the traditional cities. This map shows the conditions right after the tsunami disaster around the Zuiganji Temple in Miyagi Prefecture. So Zuiganji Temple is also a designated important cultural heritage by Japanese government. And you know, the area of Miyagi and Sendai area is suffered so many times by the tsunami in long history. And in the case of these times, the tsunami flood area is coming up nearby to the main buildings. But very unfortunately, the edge of the tsunami is stopped just in front of the main buildings and the major temples at that time. So I believe that maybe so those very historical buildings and site is already survived the so long history of disasters. So as that at the end, maybe so those temples and traditional temples and shrines can survive even in the modern disasters by tsunami. And because of that, and in the scene of the Tohoku tsunami, most of the official designated evacuation site also get suffered because of the strong and big tsunami. So as that most of the local people and also the visitors should go to the temples and shrines to find the space for evacuations. This is the actual scene of training hall of Zuiganji Temple the day after the March 11 tsunami. So you can see that so many people stay in the training hall as a temporary evacuation site. Of course, in the case of Zuiganji and many temples and shrines, they are not officially designated as an evacuation site. But so local people well known about that. So about the history and the experience of their ancestors, and so they try to come to the temples and shrine for find the space for evacuations. And this is another example. So you can see the shrines on the top of the hill. And you can see that so the site is slightly survived from the tsunami wave. So like that, we have so many cases, temples and shrines, which can slightly survive from the serious tsunami effect. So we try to start research about cases of traditional temples and shrines, which can utilize as evacuation base in the scene of the March 11 tsunami. And so our target is set on the Ishinomaki area. And fortunately, we can get the information by the hearing research from 17 temples and shrines. And so we held the hearing research by interview to understand how the space was used and how the equipment was used, because all of those temples and shrines is not designated as an official evacuation base at that time. And this is a reference to understand the functions needed for serving as official evacuation center in general by the national government. So of course, we need the living space, cooking space, laundry, lavatory, and shower space for evacuees' life. And we need also the space for operation, office space or meeting for volunteer, carrying in, sorting, and relation food, and notice and information sharing space. And also we need the equipment as, if possible, of course, the electricity, water, and gas, and communication means and indoor conditions as the heater, and measures for a person requiring assistance and stock of supplies. Of course, in a case of the official designated evacuation space, they should equip those kind of, they should have those kind of the potency and the capacity to be an official evacuation base. But in the case of the temporary and private evacuation site, such as temples and shrines, it is out of the rules. But in the case of by-cage temple, it's a typical case of temples. Traditionally, though, they have a religious hall, so because it is a it has a statue of Buddha for religious activities. And in the same time, most of the temples or shrines equipped this kind of the big meeting hall for a meeting of local community or religious activities for sending and pray for the dead person originally. And for that purpose, they sometimes they have a very big cooking space and many kind of the utensils to boil the water for serve the tea or small dishes for daily activities. And in the rural area, especially, those temples and shrines combined with the priest house or the monk's house. And those resources can be used as a evacuation base, very fortunately. So for example, in the case of meeting hall, so they have a tatami mattress on the ground, on the floor, so as that it is very comfortable for the evacuees to spend the time in, especially in the night times. And they have also the laboratory for semi-public use, so as that it can be also very useful in the scene of the emergency situation. Like that, so from now, so I would like to discuss about each element which can be used as a emergency situation. So for living space, we already know about that. So the meeting halls and the religious halls can be used. The meeting hall is very easy to use for living space for evacuees. But in the case of religious hall, sometimes it's a very old and it has a high-rise ceilings to keep the statue of Buddha and so on. So sometimes the temperature of the interior is very cold. But in emergency situations, those religious halls also can be used as some family with pet, like so cat or dog, or so some young family with small children or something. So sometimes the small children so cry with a so loud voice, so as that sometimes those kind of the religious hall can be used as a backup space for keeping the privacy and so on. And in the case of indoor conditions for lighting, so of course, after the tsunami and the earthquake, so the electricity system is totally disabled. But in the case of temples and shrines, traditionally they already have the thick candles for ceremonies from the daily basis, so as that most of the temples and shrines doesn't need to store this additional lantern. They can use the thick candles for night times. And for heating, because in the case of Tohoku disasters, so it occurred in March 11, so as that it's a winter season still at that times. So most of the temple and shrines traditionally have the kerosene stove for daily basis. So it can be also very useful in the scene of the emergency situation, especially for the elder persons. And but it is a challenge that the shrines and temples have to bear the cost of maintenance and repair of equipment and facilities after recovery, because those temples and shrines is not designated official evacuation center, so as that they should repair by themselves after the disasters. About the cooking space, so we already know about that the hall kitchen or house kitchen was used, and so they cook and boil the tea water from the daily basis. So and also they can use gas as a propane gas of the shrine or temples, because most of those locations are in a rural area. So they don't use the city gas network, but also propane gas. So they can easy to get the gas tank from the tsunami suffered area, and they easily use gas to boil the water and cook. And in the case of electricity, so it has a very challenges, but some local people who are working for the agricultural activities. They have the electricity generators, so as that they try to use it. And in the case of daily life water, so in most of the temples, traditional temples and shrines are already located before the modernization era with the city water network. So most of those sites have already existing water resources as underground water or mountain runoff. And about the supplies, food, it's quite important. Of course, most of the temples and shrines are not equipped or store the emergency food, but the shrines or temples stock and offerings are used in that case. Traditionally, so most of the shrines or temples are always stock the offerings. And in the case of Tohoku area, the udon noodles, it's a Japanese traditional noodle, and stocked by the dried noodles. And it can be utilized as an emergency food right after the disasters. Okay, so this is a review of space and equipment. So, now we understand they have so many kind of the merit. So as a living space and cooking space that can cope with a large group of people from the daily basis. And consideration for privacy by partitioning the space. They have a backup space in most cases. And lighting and heating and large cooking equipment are provided. And so large number of candles, and they can be offered to others. And a regular stock of supplies as an offering is also a very important point to be an emergency base. But in the same time, they have some demerit as a financial burden of utilities after recovery of lifetimes and maintenance and repair costs for space and equipment, and difficulty in getting information in comparison with the other public evacuation centers because it's only the private evacuation centers. And the necessity to take into account hygiene for well, water, and so on. So as that if we can build some support systems to utilize those traditional resources as temples and shrines as an emergency backup evacuation center, then so it can be, those problems can be solved. Okay, so this is my last slide. So it's a key message. So citizen participation is indispensable, you already know, for developing the resilient urban areas with strong community bond. Of course, we need to prepare for the hardware against emergency situations. But of course, we need people's communication, especially in the case of the disastrous situations. So as that we should think about how to keep the strong community bond from the daily basis with the cultural activities for future. And next point is traditional knowledge, importance of the traditional knowledge for disaster mitigation, which can achieve both urban resilience and also the cultural value conservation, so in the same times. So thank you very much for your attention. So this is the end of my presentation. So if you have interest in this kind of topic, please visit our website on the disaster, RITS DMATCH. So thank you so much for your attention. Thank you.
Arigato gozaimasu, Prof. Okubo. Very nice sharing, informative and interesting. I think I like the idea of disaster imagination game, the housewife team, and also community participation, and also using temple as a shelter during disaster. So we do have a few minutes before we go to the next panels, but I cannot address all the questions, although we have several questions. So for this, I would like only to ask ask to you only one question. So the others I will bring at the end. So just one question before we go to the next panel. So one question from Associate Professor Dr. Sohim Mansura to Prof. Okubo. Does the community-based DRR map made from the DIG exercise also incorporate information from scientific and technical hazard map? If yes, how is it done? So Prof. Okubo.
Okay, so thank you very much for the good question from Matsura-san. So, of course, we need scientific resources to build up the disaster risk map or such kind of the information. So as that in the case of Japan, very fortunately, so we have a detailed hazard map produced by each local government. So as that for the first step to start this kind of the disaster imagination game workshop, we share those basic information from the beginning. So so as that it is very easy to understand what kind of the possibility of damage can be occurred from the information of public disaster imagination disastrous information maps. But you know, so in some cases, for example, in my experience, so I have had the similar workshop in Nepal. So in such cases, so sometimes they don't have any basic information about the hazard. So if possible, so we try to invite those specialists for the field of the disaster imagination game at the beginning. Then so we can share the information not only from the local people, but also from the specialist of the risk management. So thank you so much. So I don't know so whether my answer is adequate for Matsura-san's question, but it's my opinion. It's my opinion. So thank you so much.
Okay, thanks again, Prof. Okubo. So for all any other question, we will bring into at the end of the session after all panel has delivered their sharing. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Puan Haslinda binti Muhammad Hamran from the Flood Management Division, the ID Department of Irrigation and Drainage Malaysia for her presentation. Please welcome Puan Haslinda.
Can everyone view my slides now?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Siti Zairia. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum, Ohayo gozaimasu, and very good morning to all my beloved participants in this special day online webinar. Dean of MJIT, Professor Dr. Ali Slamat, JICA Expert Associate Professor Dr. Shahim Matsura, Director of DPPC Dr. Kamaru Azari Razak, and not to forget to my distinguished speakers, Professor Takeyuki Okubo and my beloved topic companion, Dr. Ang Ming Chi. Thank you to Malaysia-Japan International Institute of Technology, MJIT, UTM Kuala Lumpur, and JICA for giving me a great opportunity and platform for me to share some experience and knowledge in the field of flood resilience with the conjunction of the Georgetown World Heritage Day and its 30th years as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This project was part of my master study with the great assistance and supervision from my main supervisor, Dr. Kamaru Azari Razak, and my co-supervisor, Yang Berbahagia Dr. Engineer Sabri bin Abdul Muluk, with the great supports from the various agencies such as the ID Malaysia, the ID Penang, Penang government, and not to forget from my classmate from MBRIM batch 2019-2020. So from Japan, we fly back to Malaysia and let us learn how uniqueness Penang is. Penang is known as the Pearl of the Orient, located in the northern part of peninsular Malaysia. With the population estimated nearly 1.8 million, Penang was known as the most urbanized states in Malaysia, with an urbanization level of 19.8% in 2015. During 2017, Penang was recognized by CNN among the top 10 best places in the world to retire. On the climatic weather, Penang enjoy a tropical climate throughout the year. The weather is very much influenced by the surrounding sea due to its island settings. Average annual rainfall Penang usually is 2,350 millimeter, with relative humidity between 75% to 85%. Southwest monsoon generally influence the weather in Penang to occur between May to September each year. So, however, the effects of the monsoon shift from September to November, and it also gives the impressions of high rainfall intensity for Penang. The impact of this monsoon wind has often caused Penang to be hit by the frequent flood, especially in the urban areas. Georgetown is the capital city of Penang, the first city in Malaysia since 1st January 1957. Georgetown is located in the Northeast District with a densely population of nearly 600,000 people. The Northeast District is not only the administrative city to the Penang state, but it is also among the highly populated and dense with the urbanization where most of the prominent towns and places of interest are in this district. And based on the city's achievement, Georgetown has achieved their target as a Global City Index, World-Class City, Best City Index, Livable City Index, and Sustainable Cities Index. But it is going to achieve in the future as the Smart Cities by 2030. In 2008, Georgetown was inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site that covers 259.42 hectares, comprises of 5,030 buildings in the core and the buffer zone. Perhaps we could flashback the disaster that hit Penang 4 years ago. The state has experienced worst hit by massive flood in November 2017. Within 13 hours of cumulative storms with repeating later period of more than 100 ARI has resulted in existing drainage capacity in Georgetown, which only designated for protection among 20 ARI, could no longer accommodate the surface runoff capacity and causing overflow as well as flooding in the city, including UNESCO World Heritage Site. It has triggered massive floods, damages to the infrastructures, business activities, and cost of 6 lives. The highest rainfall recorded at 263 millimeter in the Northeast District with the influence of high tide and impact from the tail of Typhoon Damri in Vietnam. So enclosed here were the pictures and the newspaper cuttings recorded in the Georgetown devastated city during the disaster in November 2017. So the flood depth ranges from 0.01 meter until 2.35 meter respectively. Rapid growth and the economic activities around the Georgetown have caused flood. Some of the other factors that naturally occurred and caused by the human-induced has contributed to the cause of the flood in the Georgetown area, such as high-intensity rainfall within 1 to 3 hours, the tide influences through Penang River, up about 3.2 kilometers from the river mouth itself. And then during the flood event in Georgetown in November 2017, it has caused a high impervious surface, which is roughly 57.6%, resulted from the surface water moving rapidly into the river, plus sloping terrain conditions, and due to the topography of Georgetown as an island which close to the sea. So it caused the water of taking a longer time to recede and slower in releasing back the water into the sea due to tidal and also the backwater effect. Also, the inadequate existing old drainage system in Georgetown, which designated for protection only 20 years ARI, could no longer accommodate the surface of runoff capacity and causing the overflow. And secondly, the illegal dumping or debris, rubbish, and also waste from the domestic, industrial, and agriculture were disposed into the river has caused obstruction of flow water into the rivers and also to drainage. And lastly, the utilities facilities which was built across the river has caused the constriction of the flow of water in the river and also the drainage. Usually when we talk about flood as a natural hazard, structural mitigation will always come at first to be as the best solution to reduce or to mitigate this issue. But as an effort to strengthen the flood resilience in Georgetown, especially to safeguard and preserve the heritage assets and cultural, minimize the damages and reduce the economic losses in this area, I think the most part is the holistic approach would be the best and the most reliable and non-expensive way in mitigating the flood issue. In the development of flood hazard map, it requires technical expertise to generate the hazard map that involves hydrology and hydraulic input and assessment. The most important part is the 2D hydrodynamic modeling that provides flood levels, flood extent, flood velocities, and also flow behavior for a range of flooding conditions. The hazard map was further produced to support the substantial inputs or local inputs obtained from the stakeholder engagement. This stage is actually quite the same as what have been mentioned by Professor Takeyuki Okubo by implementing traditional knowledge as the input to the flood hazard map. The output data then translated into the GIS platform by using ArcGIS to integrate, analyze, and to improve the visualization of the hazard map as the final process before the establishment of the integrated flood hazard map. So as you can see, the picture shows the various activities has been conducted with the local stakeholders, namely such as Penang Island City Council, MBPP, Department of Irrigation and Drainage Penang, PEGIS, Penang State Secretary Office, Tin City, Bomba, Georgetown World Heritage Incorporated, where you can also find Dr. Ang also in this picture as she was among the key persons involved in this study and many more. It was such a valuable experience to be on ground with all the agencies that play their important roles during the disaster. So based on the output of Penang Stakeholders Program in 2019 and 2020, we managed to capture about 14 local inputs as shown on the slide from the stakeholders to enhance the visualization and understanding of flood hazard map, such as flood depth, evacuation routes, location of the nearest hospital, clinic, police, APM and Bomba, flood hotspots, location of sirens and early warning system, rivers and drainage, evacuation center, discharge point, heritage sites, also included in this output, and then school, old folks homes and orphanage center, flood supply centers, existing retention ponds or dam, temporary disaster shelters, and also emergency contacts. So by adding all the features based on the local input, the map can be easily translated and interpreted not only by the technical people, but also for the non-technical people. The public can use the integrated flood hazard map, or we call it as IFHM, to obtain flood-related information, such as to identify the flood hotspots and evacuation centers during the disasters. Therefore, IFHM was technically produced by the technical agencies and embedded with the local inputs from the stakeholders. IFHM is an enhancement transformation tool with significant improvement in dynamic visibility, cartographic and level of details, supported by the hydrodynamic modeling and also local knowledge obtained from the local community. This is the example of the integrated flood hazard map for Georgetown UNESCO World Heritage Site based on 20 ARI return period. And heritage plays a crucial role in fostering resilience by reducing vulnerabilities and providing precious assets for the sustainable social and also economic development. So therefore, the protection and preservation of heritage assets in the event of disaster is very important. The flood scenario in November 2017 was simulated with the 100 average recurrent intervals, or we call it as ARI, the worst flood condition. And the result of the inundation area in the Georgetown UNESCO World Heritage Sites from this model is about 0.412 square kilometer as shown in the presentation. The flood depth in this area ranges from 0.5 meter minimum up to 1.2 meter maximum. The severity of floods in the low-lying area in the Georgetown itself, which is along Jalan Pintar Tali, Lebuh Citra, Jalan Masjid, Lebuh Mutri, Lebuh Keng Kui, Lebuh Carnarvon, Lebuh Melayu, Lorong Lumut, and Lebuh Kimberley, depends on road levels and the flood levels of the adjacent existing shop houses. There is no evacuation center within the UNESCO World Heritage perimeter and only 2 nearest fire stations located within this area. So to show you furthermore in the clearer view, the map shows the larger versions of affected heritage assets based on the 100 ARI flood simulation. And to summarize the findings, there are about 30 streets or roads and 7 heritage buildings are vulnerable to inundate. The proposed action should be taken by the state government in structural mitigation, such as to implement the drainage improvement works, to carry out the flood proofing structure for building preservation or conservation by implementing flood retrofitting and underground water storage, and then to control the upstream point source by providing the retention point, and to provide and install flood hydraulic pumps, floodgate, and tidal gate to prevent the encroachment of flood water and tidal intrusion into the heritage area. Meanwhile, for the action proposed for non-structural mitigation are such to establish heritage disaster risk management plan, to have frequently community-based disaster risk awareness program, to develop flood hazard and risk map, to provide flood forecasting and early warning system, introduce flood insurance scheme to affected community, to build an identified designated evacuation center, and also to provide tourist disaster information center. To ensure the flood risk informed and disseminate awareness among the stakeholders, the flood hazard story map was developed in an interactive online cloud-based mapping created by the ArcGIS Online. So in this case, the ID Malaysia server platform was utilized to integrate the generated IFHM into the online platform. The online user-friendly mapping actually could help the public and the relevant government departments to obtain flood-related information in Georgetown via all types of devices and also the operating system. The interactive map-based application is able to provide fast, accurate, and also reliable information in the event of the disaster to the public, government, and other relevant parties. So in conclusion, the integrated flood hazard map was developed by the integration of local knowledge, science-based expertise, and digital information platform sharing. It provides a clear foundation in risk communication for local management in UNESCO World Heritage Site. It can be used as a decision-making tool for the multi-purposes such as to prevent flood damages, to provide the information on floods and evacuation routes and shelters, to assist in search and rescue operations, and to determine a safe platform level from flooding for various types of development. IFHM can be used as a medium of communication by the local government in the awareness campaign and also in the emergency drill with the participation of the community members at all level groups, risk and protection, including the tourists, children, orphanage, disabled, elderly people, and also the heritage asset. By disseminating and circulating the IFHM in a multiple way, it could help develop a clear message to the affected population to help them understand and interpret the disaster in a simple manner. This communication is a must to be inclusive in a fulfilling commitment in the global agenda and Penang 2030, ensuring no one left behind during the calamities. World heritage properties and sites in general are exposed to the impacts of natural catastrophic events, which threaten the integrity and may compromise the value of the heritage. So the loss of these outstanding properties has severely negative impacts on the local communities because of the cultural importance and because of the socio-economic value. In order to support the global commitments in disaster risk reduction based on number 1, Paris Agreement on Climate Change by UNFCCC, secondly, Sendai Framework on Disaster Risk Reduction by UNDRR, and third, by 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development by UNDP. And for the local supports, of course, the commitment requires the national and local vision to implement it on the ground by implementing the Shared Prosperity Vision 2030 and Penang 2030 Vision with the complement of Penang Structure Plan, Georgetown Special Area Plan, and also technical and manual guidelines from the technical departments such as the ID measure, especially in the flood mitigation. So by integrating all these policies, it helps the state governments to adapt to the impact of climate change and to reduce the risk of the disaster and support the resilient disaster recovery. In other aspect, IFHM could assist Penang government and local city council is as a useful tool by providing the technical reference and guidance in local structure plan and policy making for the future development. IFHM provides local and tourists with a compelling visual aid that will reinforce the urgency of findings areas they need to evacuate and protected their heritage assets. So it is also part of the risk assessment tools for the new revised Georgetown Special Area Plan by showcasing the flood disaster risk area in the heritage site in order to take possible risk mitigating action to preserve the cultural and heritage of the city and improve the tourism industry. So the current SFP, Georgetown SFP has highlighted the flood issue in Georgetown by providing the structural mitigation plan to mitigate the local flooding issue. But I would suggest it would be much more better if the state government may focus and highlight more on the non-structural approaches by expanding the disaster management in a broader view, more on the disaster risk reduction education and awareness, and developing the disaster risk management guidelines and strengthening the risk communication through the disseminating of flood hazard map at local levels via community engagement. So, and another one, and finally, my suggestion is Penang government should take this opportunity to coordinate with the federal government in developing the first online flood hazard map via the existing PEGIS platform, which is the Geo Bencana portal and public info banjir platform as part of risk communication in disaster risk management, which in line with the Penang 2030 vision. By using the cloud-based platform, it could harness the value of open data for the resilient initiative, strengthen and improve the level of preparedness of the community, especially in the early warnings, and also the alerting the public enables them to access and obtain the disaster information from the reliable sources. So with that, I end my presentation with wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Happy 30th anniversary Georgetown UNESCO World Heritage Site. Thank you, arigato gozaimasu, and terima kasih.
Thank you very much, Puan Haslinda. It is very interesting sharing as from your side, from the practitioner side, from the ID. Lots of information about all the structural measures being done by the ID, and as we can see, lots of documents and policy being prepared by the government, either state or local. And also I can see that you highlighted about the long-term plan and budget allocation under our 12 Malaysian plan related to climate change and disaster. Thank you very much, Puan Aslinda. So far we do not have any specific question for you yet. So I think we will continue first. Maybe the participants still digesting the information because you are more a bit technical and lots of
Okay.
for those who are not familiar with the term of structural measures from the DID part. Okay, so anyway, we will continue to our third speaker, Dr. Ang Ming Chi from Georgetown World Heritage Incorporated for her presentation. The floor is yours, Dr. Ang. First.
All right. Good morning. Ohayo gozaimasu. Thank you for inviting me. I hope that you can see my screen now.
Yes, Dr. Ang.
All right. Okay. So I'm very happy to be here. Happy 30th anniversary in Georgetown. We are very happy today because we also move forward to phase 2 of the recovery. So it's very good news for us. Today, I'll be sharing with you the experience from Georgetown UNESCO World Heritage Site on our work on disaster risk reductions. So I thank Professor Okobo and my colleague Haslinda for setting the momentum. So I will go very fast on things that you all have covered for me. So this is the location of Georgetown in Penang. As you all rightly said, so 13 years ago, we were instructed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site together with Malacca. And what does that mean? That means that the cultural heritage of Georgetown and Malacca is recognized internationally. That also gives us the platform to use Georgetown as a case study for many researchers, many professionals, and for us to mobilize resources for the local people on the benefits of local developments in a sustainable way. So Puan Haslinda have helped me to cover on this part. Thank you very much. But one thing that I would like to highlight, when we look into the World Heritage Site per se, we have to look outside the boundaries. As UNESCO rightly said so on the historic urban landscape, the World Heritage Site is not isolated, it's related to the bigger picture, to the Penang Hill, to the Tanjung Bunga Beach, to Bali Pulau Durians. So we are all related, so I hope that we when we talk about the cultural heritage site in Georgetown, think of the bigger picture and look into the island and the regional geographical factors also. So as usual, when I introduce the UNESCO World Heritage Site and with my case study, I would like to just spend a few minutes with you on the outstanding universal values of Georgetown Heritage City. It is important for us to understand that we are inscribed in the World Heritage Site for 3 main OUV, outstanding universal values. So the first one is that the activities of multicultural trading towns in Georgetown is very important. So we have a lot of businesses, long-term businesses, new businesses, by a lot of different cultural backgrounds. These activities shape the uniqueness of Georgetown Heritage City. Second one is we are the living testimony to the multicultural heritage. It's a lot of activities that we do. People who go into the site to pray, to buy things, to do their daily activities. This is also part of the identity of World Heritage Site. Of course, we also have people, residents who live there, people like me who doesn't live in the World Heritage Site, but I travel daily to the World Heritage Site to work. So there's a lot of people, it's a cultural heritage site. So community is a very important element here. Last but not least, we have very unique architectures. I believe that all of you who have been to Georgetown, you know what I mean, the uniqueness of the composition of architectures, category 1, category 2, even the infill developments in Georgetown somehow shape the unique townscape in it. So these are some of the very tangible, but it helped us to understand of oh, Georgetown, very special. I want to go there. Therefore, in 2010, the state government of Penang has established Georgetown World Heritage Incorporated. In short, we call it GTWHI. As rightly introduced by Dr. Siti, our main duty is to manage, safeguard, conserve, and promote the World Heritage Site. I don't work alone, it's impossible. I have my colleagues, some of them are here today, that help us to work with the committees on all these tasks that I show here is just part of our daily tasks. I would like to say that, the site management of a World Heritage Site, you depend on the site managers, we depend on the state party. Over here in Malaysia is Jabatan Warisan Negara, or the Heritage Department of Malaysia. And we have the governments, the local government, some of my colleagues from MBVP is also here today, and the local committees and the professionals and the academics. So everyone have to work collectively on a good balance of the management. This is the positions of where we are. We are not a government agencies. We are government-linked companies. So it's GLCs. It's very unique because we use the government fund, we use a private system for efficiency, and we work very closely with all the government agencies. We are also non-statutory, so we have no rights to issue compounds. So we have to depend on soft approach like communications, persuasions, negotiations for people, and educations and outreach activity for people to understand why is cultural heritage management and conservation important for the society. All right, so let me move into the disaster risk reductions activities in the Georgetown Heritage City. I was first introduced to the concept in depth in 2017 after the 2015 Sendai framework conference that was mentioned earlier, that was organized in Georgetown. And after that, we were given the opportunities to conduct this together with ICRON. At that time, we have a very small but important workshops to understand of like what is the disaster risk reduction. And from this project sponsored by UNESCO and also our NECCOM, National Commission of UNESCO in Malaysia, I was given the opportunity to attend the international training course at Rizumeikan University. You can try to find Okubo Sensei over here, I think 4 years ago. So when he was sharing his lecture this morning, I was like, yeah, I'm back to, things that we have learned in Kyoto at that time. And I would like to highlight to all of you, it is a very good course. So you should really try to search ITC, Rizumeikan, or DMAC and become our alumni. So from this training, I understand a little bit better on DRR, and in particular DRR and cultural heritage. So here, after the training in Kyoto, I came back to Penang, continue my job. And in 2018, we are able to get a fund from NECCOM Malaysia, and with the help from UNESCO, we have national workshops in Georgetown. And that is actually just after the big flood that Puan Haslinda has been mentioning in her presentation earlier, the November 2017, the one of the biggest in the history of Penang. And during these national workshops, together with the committee, we set up our actions plan. And here I would like to share with you what we have done after that. One of it is like, like what Puan Hasina has said, the special area plan, or also known as a conservation management plan for Georgetown Heritage City. The current chapters talk only about flood, but we realize that we need to go beyond that. The two of the main threats in the site is fire and flood, air dan api. So we are now in the process to work with Plan Malaysia Penang to expand these particular chapters. And Puan Hasina, rest assured, everything that you said is in the pipeline, and we will remind, we are reminded, and we remind the consultants also that put in and elaborate our chapter on disaster risk management with meaningful and active community participations. This is very important because it will set down the tune and set the guidelines of how are we going to do so. So special area plan is one of our action plans. And number two is like what I have learned from Okubo Sensei and under the international training course is like the community-based DRR capacity training. We all know Malaysia is a multicultural, multilingual society. So everything that we do in Georgetown, we make sure that number one is translated and available in the language that local community can understand. So we don't want to use big words that they have like no idea. So we use simple words that they can relate to their daily life. And for me, this is important to engage to the community leaders, you know, whom are able to lead their particular groups. And so for the past few years, in 2018 and 2019, we have conducted quite a lot of workshops using the imagination games, but Malaysian version and Penang style. When I say Penang style, that means that we have Penang goreng pisang, Penang teh tarik, Penang nasi lemak, and Penang languages and Penang context. And I believe and strongly encourage everyone, you know, you can also do that in Johor, in Malacca, in Sabah. It's not too difficult to do so, but one of the things is like, make sure that we understand the concept, get the commitments from the local committee. And one of the things that we have adapted is like, instead of doing a workshop for 2 weeks, we have a 2 hours workshop for five months. So it's easier for our community to find their time to come and also for them to digest the information that we would like to share. So this is one of the example. It's a sharing from the Bun San Tong Pu Kong Si. They are one of the main clan association in Georgetown. And as you can see here, in November 2018, when we asked Mr. Koo to share his sharing, he take some time to understand, but his final presentation in 2019 June, when we give him the platform to share his disaster risk management plan, one of the things that really touched my heart is that he said that he cannot sleep the night before when he looked into his PowerPoint. He understands the real risk of fire that might come in and threaten his cultural heritage under their associations. So it is a long process for us to understand that, you know, when you really pick up DRR for cultural heritage is important, put into the understanding of the local community and they will do the rest. So I think this is a very important lessons learned that I would like to share with all of you. This is Shireen, my colleagues. One of the things I learned from Kyoto is like, you know, not only the top management, the head of departments need to learn about this, but you also have to engage the administrative officer, you know, the people who's at the front line who will see fire first, will see flood first, to be the local leaders that will help us for the implementation. Sharon is my administrative officer in the office, and she is also the leader that will be activating any SOP that we need to do in case of flood or fire. So I'm very thankful that, you know, she is now doing her job very well, and she always reminds the management of GDL Chai of what we need to do according to the SOP that we have prepared under this program. Our third action plan is early warning system and response system. So among that, you know, these are the list of the things that we have done. With the help from UNESCO and NAPCOM Malaysia also, we have purchased a lot of sets. 100 set is those already given up. In the pipeline, we have more. We welcome funding for this. If anyone want to sponsor, it's like we provided fire extinguishers. We have about 5,000, at least 5,000 buildings in the World Heritage Site. My aim is like to give at least one additional units of fire extinguisher to everybody. Make sure it's well maintained. And also through this process, we invite the committee to attend trainings that we conducted together with the local firemen. Build the relationship, exchange the phone numbers, give the training, build up trust. And these are the ongoing activities that we still do. For last year, we are not able to do so due to the stay at home and the SOP, but I believe that soon we are going to activate these activities again. We also provide the smoke detectors. smoke detector is not very common in household. It's the additional elements, but that's why we want to introduce it. And the experience that you can see, like, even small children, we encourage them to use fire extinguisher, because for us, that is where education should start from. We also go into the communities. This is at the jetties. And for last year, we have visited them again, make sure the fire extinguisher is in good place, and also to understand where are the risks in their home. And these are the activities that we will continue to do so this year. So the next one is like to set up the emergency response team, ERT, to carry out equipment and tool maintenance and holding training and drills. I'm strongly influenced by the belief that, the biggest capacity that we have is the local people. So emergency response team is one of the key tasks, because, when we have a lot of people living, working in the sites, there's the day use and the night use. So those trainings, we have to merge to as many people as possible. And these are the training conducted by GDLSI team together with the local communities. One of the things that I've learned after 3 years is that, with the networking with, in particular, the fire departments in Malaysia, we have the opportunity to really expand our work. So on the pictures at the right, you will see that I was the one in the red vest, inspecting one of the building in Georgetown where they site together with the senior officers from the fire departments. We were discussing on adaptations allowed, under the cultural heritage rule to provide emergency escape, additional emergency escape staircase. So I'm very glad that we have moved forward from just capacity training into a more interagency and interinstitutional collaborations to provide a safer place for the communities. Of course, we need to provide other training, for example, first aid and the AED training. One of the experience I have here is that, we make sure that our activities are covered on the newspaper. And this kind of ecology will help us to create more awareness, to invite more partners, and it does help. Another thing is that we also has established our poster, printed out, and we do exhibit it at most of the occasions that we participate as co-sponsors or co-organizers. These are the 4 languages posters, and if you are interested, you can drop me an email. I'm very happy to share with you the PDF versions. We are out of stock now on the physical printing, but we will print again. So I learned from Japan that they have very good visuals on DRR. So we adjusted it in GDLSI. I have it in English, Malay, Tamil, and Mandarin. We print it out, we give it to the school, we give it to the all local assemblymen, we give it to the main clan association, churches, temples, mosques, you name it, they have it. And for me, it's this passive education, put it on the wall, people will learn, people might use it, as a reference during emergencies. I have a lot, the red color is the fire, the blue color is the flood. So we have be prepared. Okobo Sensei might be familiar, I copy from somewhere in your presentations. And then when fire happens or when flood happens, what do you do? One very important thing is when our visual team come out with the proposal, we also bring the draft for inputs of the committee, because we might think it works, but when the committee read it, they, the receivers, they might have other ideas. So I'm very thankful with their help that, to do a good work here. And then after the fire, what can we do? Reduce fire risk, or in particular, the promotion of flood emergency kit. I was strongly inspired by the earthquake emergency kit that we have to prepare when we live in Japan. So can we also start, creating the awareness of flood-prone locations? We have to do this for the flood emergency kit. Georgetown might have flood once in a while, but it was subdued in a few hours. But we do have other cities that always have flood problems, and I think that is a place that we can expand this flood emergency kits idea. Puan Hasina, very soon I'm going to write emails to you to ask for your updated GIS database, because it is very important to have this database, and we are very fortunate in Penang. We have our PEGIS, the department that always provide the most updated GIS. What we have done is we have identified all the fire host locations and make sure the maintenance is well done. And we are, from GDO's high perspective also, we are doing systematic collection of oral history of the local people, of the measure drawing of the buildings, and of course, from JPS, from Puan Hasina project, the flood-prone locations. And as far as I know, the local council is also doing a lot of systematic drain expansion project without disturbing on our cultural heritage or the architecture of our building. So works are ongoing on site. Of course, standard operational procedures or SOP is very important for the post-disaster mitigations. One thing that we have also provided is how to save your wet documents. During the 2017 flood, I realized that, as much as we are helping during that whole few months, we need to educate the local people, because they are the ones who are facing off wet documents, important photos from your family. So we have prepared this as our mitigation to share with more people of what they can do in a household level, things that they can find at home to save their cultural heritage documents or artifacts. This is the one that we have shared in 3 languages on our social media. And I would like to thank Wismakan University because the action plan that I have just shared with you already all implemented, and we have received the awards for exemplary practice on disaster for risk management of cultural heritage from the UNESCO Chair on Cultural Heritage and Risk Management Program. So thank you again for the recognition on behalf of the local people in Georgetown. We really appreciate these recognitions, and we will continue to do our best to protect on our cultural heritage. Now, the next one, disaster risk reduction, cultural heritage, and community. I would like to use this opportunity to highlight that our DRR work, yes, is on physical and non-physical. Physical infrastructures, drain expansion, floodgate, we have to do that. But more importantly, is make sure that everything that we learn from a UNESCO heritage site or cultural heritage site, it is applicable to everywhere. This photo is taken, I think 3 years ago, 2019, and this is one of the oldest Chinese temple in Bukit Matajam, Penang. They are not on the island; they are on the mainland. Many of you might heard it. Overnight flyer just come up, and the whole temple was burned down. And I received call from the local community at Bukit Matajam. Although our main task is the wildlife site management, but because we have the training on DRR on cultural heritage, so my team actually went to the mainland and provided our support for the local people. We went in, we followed the protocols. On the left upper pictures, he's the chairman, and I was there to explain to him of the damage assessment visually, and very fast visual assessment, about 10 minutes, because it's quite dangerous. The foundation already tilted. We produced the post disaster damage assessment and the risk report for them. We also have a meeting with all their trustees immediately, and from there we discuss of the mitigation strategies that they can use, and there are a lot of questions asked, in particular immediately after the damage. One thing to my surprise is while I was thinking the temple is important, they told me this too is the most important, because the continuity of the cultural heritage of these particular temples identified by the temple's trustee, it's not so much about the statue, but it's more of this dust that they worship, because for them the continuity of the temple activities will be able to continue as long as they are able to salvage the dust that you can see on the right hand side. So there is always something that we can learn from the local community, and this is what I learned. Listen to them, they will tell you the answers. Unfortunately, there was another fire happened last year in February. It was just opposite my office. Big fires, and I know the community, the owner of these particular buildings, because our shop houses is very long, and this particular building have 3 air wells, so you can imagine how long the building is. Almost all the fire trucks in Penang were there, and then I think we used almost about 2 weeks to finally kill the fire, because this shop in particularly produce papers. So we also provided the report, and luckily we have the measured drawing. So it helped us to provide a more exact of like the conservation and analysis of the recovery. We went in after the fire department give us clearance to go in to assess it. We were with the local communities, the owners who were very heartbroken because, like, his lifetime works has been burned down. But for me, DRR is not just to save the asset itself. We are also there for the local communities, for the owners in particular, on the daily basis. On the right top photos with the man in the middle, he is the owner of the buildings, and the right bottoms, the lady without the helmet, she is the sister. So we were there throughout, I think since the events happens, whatever they found on site, they will call us. We will go in immediately. We provide support. We guide them of what to do. The secret to this is not so much about empathy, not so much about sympathy, but be empathy and be there for the local communities. We continue to sell and brand the idea of DRR for cultural heritage is important. When I go to the mosque, when I go to the church, when I go to the contractors on the site, we wanted people to have awareness, and we make sure the resources that is available through Jirawachai is available for everybody, at least from the World Heritage side. So welcome back to Georgetown, when all of us are vaccinated, when things are under control for the COVID-19. We welcome any kind of like infrastructures or funding opportunities. Jirawachai will open our door and wait for you. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope my presentation is useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ang Ming Chi. A very good sharing from your part as zooming in from the context of Georgetown City itself. I think all the panels mentioning about community as the first responder, so therefore we need to acknowledge our local leaders and equip them with all the needs and skills in terms of disaster risk management or DRR. Okay, so with that, I will continue with the question and answer session. So since our final panels, so Dr. Ming Chi, we have, I will address the question for you first. So we have 2 questions, one from the MDRM student. Given the urbanization and current pandemic issue, how do GTWHI sustain for DRR countermeasures? That is number 1. And number 2 from Professor Okubo himself. Do you have some traditional measures such as old drainage system in frequent flood area in Georgetown? Was it possible to revive such traditional infrastructure for flood mitigation and fire water resource? So, Dr. Amin Chi, these 2 questions for you first.
Let me answer the COVID-19 pandemic. I think the risk that we are facing under COVID-19 is another scale, another level, and it's not just limited to the heritage side. You know, we are talking about livelihood, health, and also the protection of the cultural heritage elements, tangible and intangible. So I can briefly tell you what we have done, you know, GDLChai. I think since last year, we are working very closely with UNESCO in particular, and also the site managers of the heritage site from the world, because this is not especially for Georgetown. Everyone in the world is facing the challenge. COVID-19, of course, number one is that, you know, we have to make sure everyone is aware of the SOP, you know, as the statement that I released yesterday, the eve on the 13th anniversary, I said, we all are the living heritage. We are the living heritage. So the first thing that comes to my mind is we have to outcome the COVID-19 challenges, stay alive, because you are the living heritage. You have the knowledge, you carry the cultural heritage. So this is number one. Number two is like documentation. So since last year, we have interviewed a lot of and also doing a lot of documentations projects with in particular, the cultural heritage professionals. So we encourage them to do video to demonstrate how do they do their cultural heritage activities. Because when life is threatening, you never know who's going to be next who get a COVID-19. So video now is the platform that everyone shared. So we do a lot of documentation project under the Georgetown in the New Normal project. You can go to GDLChai website or social media to know more, or you can drop me an email. And last but not least, you know, there are also heritage buildings that need maintenance. So we also provided a small fund for them to maintain and repair. And during this fund, we actually encourage the local community to upgrade their electrical systems. So we have also identified, you know, the old electrical cable is one of the main cause of fire. So we also channel some funding for the local people, in particular those who live in heritage building, to upgrade their system. So I think we have benefited more than 100 applicants. I don't have the number with me now, but you know, we do systematically go down to the local level and help them. I hope I answer your question.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Amin Chi, for the answer. Prof. Okubo, I will save the best for last for you. So now we go to Puan Haslinda first. I have two questions, although some question Puan Haslinda has actually answered in the Zoom chat box, but since we live also in the Facebook and YouTube, so I will repeat the question. To reduce the risk of flood, how flood mitigation projects or upgrading of undersized internal drainage can be carried out in heritage area to face flood? I understand that development in heritage area is subject to guidelines set by UNESCO. That is number one. Number two for Puan Haslinda is pending flood of 2017 recorded of 270 mm of rain. If it's happened again like 2017, is the drainage system ready from the project mitigation structure measure and non-structural that have been made after 2017? So two questions for Puan Haslinda.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Let me answer the first question. I think maybe from Puan Sazliana. So actually, I've been mentioned in the slide number 15 where there is more mitigation or the remedial action should be taken besides upgrading the drainage improvement works. So for example, if it is restricted to do the development over there, such as drainage improvement, so it might be we focus more on the flood proofing, and then from control at the point source, let's say from the upstreams of the Pina River, and then installation of the flood hydraulic pumps, flood gates, and also tidal gate. So there will be another way for the structural mitigation plan. And to answer the second one, actually, I believe that Penang State is also continue doing their flood mitigation works under the budget of states, and at the same time, the federal government also has ongoing the study for the Penang River, because Penang River is the major river in the Georgetown. So we hope that the project will be on soon, so that it will cover the Georgetown UNESCO World Heritage Sites. So it will automatically and reduce the impacts of the floods to that area.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that answer, Puan Linda. We will have so many questions as well for you, but let's come back to Prof. Okubo. Okay, Prof. Okubo, two questions for you. Can you share a bit the challenges for town planner and local authorities from the Japanese experience to do the mitigation process for preservative district during COVID-19 pandemic? That is number one. Number two, is there any specific act or regulation to protect the vicinity of cultural heritage site in Japan? And also, is there any important Remembrance Day for cultural heritage sites in Japan, like we have here in Georgetown, World Heritage Day? That's a question.
Okay, so thank you so much for your good question. So one is, so it's also the serious problem for us as so COVID-19 situation. So because we need a community participant, community improvement for sharing the disaster risk, and also the development of the disaster risk management plan for future. So as that, we try to utilize information technology to share and run that kind of the workshop, virtual workshop online. And of course, we have already some trial, but still now, so we have serious problems, because in the case of workshop to using the international information technology, so it is good to discuss in between the each participant and the facilitator. But in between the facilitator, so of course we need the discussion in between the each facilitators on the online workshop, but sometimes it is very difficult. And also most of the stakeholder is aged people in a historic district, and sometimes they don't understand how to connect and how to use tools of information technology and so on. So as that, so anyhow, maybe so we should think about the new normal situations even for the future. So as that, if we can share those experience with Georgetown also, so I'm very happy. So please keep in touch with us and for these problems. And I'm sorry, so please elaborate about the second question, regulation.
Is there any act or regulation related to related to how to protect the vicinity of cultural heritage site in Japan? And how frequent of this document being revised?
Documents. Oh, okay. So it's a very difficult question. So, until now, so we have so two of the major voluntary organization. So one is for the built heritage, like architecture and buildings. So we have the heritage doctor. It's a voluntary organization who can coming from the architect and who can check about the condition of the suffered buildings and architecture and so on. And the other is heritage rescue teams. So, and most of the participants of those voluntary organizations is coming from the conservation field of documents and writing documents. And so as that, but unfortunately still now, so even in case of Japan, so we have a big gap in between the built heritage team and other movable heritage teams. So as that, we should think about how to work with in each other. So not only the built heritage, but also the movable heritage and immovable and and so on. So that it's still now. So it's a serious challenge for us Japanese systems. So as a I'm sorry, so it not adequate answer for your question, but if we can share those challenges and measures with Malaysian cases, so we are very happy. So I'm sorry, so it's not the answer, but I'm sorry, but anyhow, so I'm also ongoing process to solve those, to build a clear regulation on that purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Okubo. I believe from your center as well, like from your research center also being documented all the things related to this DRR for heritage site, right, Professor Okubo? So that can be also a documented things for people to refer. Okay, since we do have times, I will list out a few questions more. So for Dr. Ang, I have one question here from you for you. From your experience, who are the most important person we need to integrate to establish and to implement the RR program in order to sustain the program?
All right. I try to type answer that question. So thank you. Number one is like ourselves. You need to believe of what you are doing. You have to be passionate of what you're doing, because DRR is a long path, and it's almost like a tango dancing, 3 steps to the front, 2 steps backward, and so you have to believe that what we are doing is for the good of ourselves, our society, our identity, our cultural heritage. Then number 2, of course, like we need to find our team, be it your professors, your colleagues, your directors, they have to be there as a support group. And number 3 is the local community, people who will be benefiting from the particular projects. They have to buy in the ideas that we are selling. It might take some time, but I believe that, if you use the local, the community-based approach, you will be able to gain their trust and ask them to buy in of our ideas. And of course, you need funders. So we have to brand it in the way that, is benefiting the local people and also the funding agencies. For me, this is 4 of it. Dr. Siti, may I use this opportunity to answer Okubo Sensei's question to me?
Yes, please.
All right. So he was asking, is there any traditional infrastructure for flood mitigation and fire water resources in Georgetown? Actually, I would like to invite everyone who are in this webinars, come to Georgetown, go to Siaboy Urban Archaeological Park. I think in 2016, we identified there was a floodgate in that canal. And from that, the location is just at the boundaries of our buffer zone, but Jirasai was asked to be the project manager for this particular project. And today, we were able to, with the help from the local councils, to build a big bypass for Georgetown and the surrounding area as the drainage bypass. So that bypass actually helped Georgetown during the 2017 flood. The flood, it was bad at one point, but after the high tide was reduced, we don't have the flooding water issues, I think, within 6 hours. So the water go out to the sea through the big bypass that was built under the heritage structures. So we were able to use the original route, 300 years ago, the floodgate, but build a big bypass without impacting on the canal, the historical canal. And on top of that, with the help from Penang Development Corporation and the state government in Jirau, we built a new park, with trees on top. And it's an open space. It's a retention pond, because that place was designed to collect water in case the flood come in again. That place was designed in case, we need a space for the emergency units come in and help the World Heritage Site. The place was designed as an evacuation point for our tourists, when they come back, for evacuation in case of flood or fire incidents in the future. So please try to look into Siaboi Urban Archaeological Park as one of the examples. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ang. So I have a general question for all panels. It is from Azizi, Mr. Azizi from UTHM. He said, congratulations for this interesting sharing. The question is, in respect to prevention point of view, what had been done to this historical and architectural merit building from structural perspective in making sure it will survive during the next potential disaster? So open to the all panels. Maybe Puan Haslina want to answer?
Okay, Doctor, I start first. I believe from the point of non-structural measures, I believe that integrated flood hazard map would be the best adoption to implement in Penang to mitigate the flood disaster, especially in the heritage area. Actually, this will guide Penang government to adopt a holistic and integrated approach in policy making for a better future for all the Penangites. Besides that, disaster risk reduction matters. So it can be measured in life, safe, secure employment, safe homes, resilience, infrastructure, and reduce economic losses. I believe that a good local strategy for disaster risk reduction is important as investment in prevention and to strengthen the disaster risk governance and to make the Penang safer and more resilient. That's all, Doctor.
Thank you, Puan Haslina. You want to add up, Professor Okubo? How can we make sure with all this prevention, how can we make sure that we can survive for the next potential disaster?
Yeah, it's a very big challenge. So, of course, unfortunately, maybe such as so my example, and also in the case of Georgetown, so those traditional and historic sites is already suffered so many times in long history of disasters. So that if we can find or study something from the past disasters and history of disasters, maybe so we can find some kind of the disaster mitigation culture itself. Then so we can, of course, now we have so many kind of the modern technologies, and the lifestyle is drastically changed from past. So that we should think about how to combine those long experience and modern technologies for go forward. So I'm sorry, it's a very general answer, but I believe that. So we should think about how to combine and withstand the modern and the traditional. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Okubo. I have one question specifically for Penang. So maybe Puan Haslina or Dr. Ang can answer. From Dr. Siti Salmia, Sungai Penang flows through the heart of Georgetown. Is there any river restoration project involving soft engineering and eco-environmental approach to create a live river running through the heritage sites rather than hard concrete design, drainage, and floodgates?
Perhaps I answer first. As I mentioned before, we did have, as a DID Penang and also DID Malaysia, we did have established a medium and long-term mitigation for Penang, especially for the Penang River. So mostly it's combination of structural and non-structural mitigation, such as one of it is the major project will be established soon, which is Penang River flood mitigation project, which is still currently under study. So actually, it will involve all the components to mitigate the flood issue in the Northeast District, especially including the Georgetown UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And I believe also State of Penang is doing their job well by implementing the maintenance of the Penang River every year, each year. And on the part of the non-structural mitigation, we do actually establish a long time ago with the river rangers, where it involves the education awareness among the school children to rehabilitate the Penang River and involves all the tributaries river into the Penang River itself. So that's part of the plan from the GID parts. Thank you.
Okay. May I continue? Thank you. I think not only the infrastructure plan that I know that is already in the pipeline, you know, to upgrade the river itself, but we also need to identify the source of pollutions, you know, who are the causes, and then take necessary mitigations, because of, like, you know, when we are talking about pollutions into the Penang River, who is causing that, what kind of, like, you know, activities that we can do to stop them, either providing compounds or, like, you know, very strict actions, or even moving some of the main source of pollutions out from the nearby area, or even providing, you know, in Japan, I see that, you know, providing good sewage and mitigation system that is in the better control of our water sources. This is very important. And I think also the public awareness, you know, we are doing a lot of, like, educations together with our colleagues from the local councils and the state government, of, like, please don't throw rubbish into the drain, you know, as simple as that. A lot of people still don't do that. But I would like to use this opportunity to also respond to Okubo Sensei question of, like, you know, traditional knowledge. Actually, what you see of Georgetown today, you know, the shop houses using lime, using bricks, actually it went through the evolutions of big fires 300 years ago. At that time, we only have attics and wood as our building, but, you know, that those materials easily will cause fire. So at that time, I read in the historical materials that, you know, the colonial government at that time provided bricks and encouraged using of lime as the materials that you can see today. Therefore, you know, our buildings are now adjusted, but we are also working with the fire departments, and also a lot of, like, you know, heritage materials and new technologies companies of, like, you know, what other materials is more fire prone, you know, can we install floodgate into the heritage building without disturbing of the heritage attributes. So my GDLCI office is under restoration now. We hope that we are able to open for the public at the end of the year. We will be sharing with you some of the examples that we are using, in particular the installation of the floodgates, and also the installation of the fire-rated door and windows. You know, these are the things that we can do, you know, to salvage our cultural heritage, at the same time make it safe for the people who are inside the building. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. I will addressing final 2+ question, but continuing from the situation in Penang, we have question from the Facebook from Mr. Benjumat Tanaka. Is there any revision or amendment under the Uniform Building Bylaws or related guideline to ensure a proper implementation plan guidelines in enforcing a better policy or SOP currently? Still in the Penang context. So either Dr. Ang or Puan Aslina can answer that.
Actually, it's more on the planning side, but I believe during the development phase, where some of the new development comes in, so they have to follow some certain acts provided by the Plan Malaysia and also others technical agencies, such as Act of Buildings for the heritage, and also they have also to refer to the guidelines by the Penang Island City Council Okay, but I'm not really sure the exact act that should be referred to. And also plus with the special area plan for Georgetown. So it is also part of the reference that the developer should be referred before proceed to the new development.
The question have to refer to MBPP, but I know that the special area plan, yes, we are working on that, to make sure that it's like, more DRR friendly. And number two is we are also in the process and pipeline of working with the fire departments and also the architect associations of coming out with DRR friendly, in particular fire prone activities that we can do for heritage buildings. So that is in the pipeline. But if you need more information, feel free to contact MPPP, or you can drop me an email. I will channel your question to my colleagues at the local council.
Okay, so may I add something? So
Yes, please.
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for your question. So of course, in the case of Japan, so we have various types of guidelines, but especially for the historic district or some kind of the cultural heritage, those heritage should be designated because of their very special. So as that sometimes it is very difficult to develop such kind of the guideline, a whole guideline for each heritage site. But in the case of Japan, so the Agency of Cultural Heritage of Japanese government asked to each manager of the historic district to build a brief guidelines for disaster risk management. So as that it is ongoing process. So in the case of Japan, but maybe in the near future, so we can share such kind of the information. So it's just a comment. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Okubo. I think that's all, although we have still so many questions. Maybe our participant can directly personally email to panels later. Anyway, before we close our session, I would like to thank all the speakers for answering all the questions and for the great presentation. Now, I would like to invite our Director of DPPC, Dr. Kamarul Azari Raza, for key message and conclusion for closing remarks. Dr. Kamarul, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Siti. Let me share my screen. Can you hear me? Can you see my screen?
Yes,
Just
we
to
can.
check. All right. Well, first of all, I would like to thanks to Dr. Siti Zaria for excellent moderation. I think it's not easy during this short period of time. So many questions, recommendation, and suggestion. And of course, I would like to thanks to Professor Okubo, our great sensei in this field, from Institute of Disaster Mitigation for Urban Cultural Heritage, for your remarkable presentation, and I would say unique recommendation. I will talk about that in a moment. And of course, Ms. Haslinda, Muhammad Amran, I think you also provide additional inputs towards this so-called disaster resilience concept, how we can translate into the local action. And last but not least, Dr. Ang, thank you from DPPC MJIT, given the short notice and your so-called busy commitments the whole month, celebrating the Georgetown World Heritage Site. I think the day today on the 7th at least mark our commitment. Let me share with everyone today some of the key remarks, key message. I differentiate into three different speakers and five key message from Professor Okubo, he was, I think, all of the speakers today mentioned. And interestingly, he was mentioning about the disaster risk management plan. So you see, the plan is not at the level of state, at the level of district, sub-district, village, but at the state of the citizen. I think very important, where he also shared some cases from Kiragawa case, for example, from Fukuoka, Mount Kasagi, many interesting. And he ended up with Miyagi example. And I was there for at least 3 times already in Miyagi. And I'm happy to hear the story from the past and how you learn this concept. Second things that we extract this Professor Kobo session, the use of learning tools, these methods in the disaster education process. It's of course easy to use and very attractive. Say for example, disaster imagination game. I think it's quite popular here as well, Professor Kobo in Malaysia. We hope that we can learn how we can mainstream this tool into the different type of disaster and location. Town watching, paper large scale maps, these mutual support card, absolutely remarkable how these are simple things becoming so important during the disaster. And the third one, I would like to use the words of championing, how you actually not only empowering, but you champion them. You let them take the lead, So how you empower the housewife, well, that's remarkable. In the example from Nagoya City, I believe, not only in Japan, but also in some area in Malaysia, say for example, in east coast of Malaysia. That's also, popular. But then we hope that we can establish a more structured way of empowering those who dedicated to increase this self-defense at the local level. Number 4, this also excellent, remarkable point to address, this chatting community around so I think post psychology traumatic process is also important, not only during the disaster but also post the recovery rehabilitation process, how you inject some of the element, for example, focusing on this emergency water and tourism resources and provide the space for them to communicate. Absolutely remarkable. And last but not least, I think there's something that can pick it up. I think something that we have seen in the presentation by Dr. Ang already, tourism friendly awareness, disaster mitigation, town planning. We upscale this citizen level, local level into these easy to follow, particularly by the tourists. So those who are not familiar very well the area, but they come into the area and they get this information easily, by walking, by searching the information and so on. And I just want quickly move to the second presenter panelist, Ms. Halslinda. She was presenting at, I think something that easy to follow, how she used this 2017 typhoon in Penang, how actually the hydrodynamic model, how the complexity of the flood modeling, mapping, assessments can be easily understand by the public. That's how the process work, and it's not easy, technically speaking. And she's an engineer by profession, but she tried to mainstream some of the technical understanding into the layman. That's an excellent point. But if you look at 5 important elements here, I think the keywords of course is a local, whether you use the hazard assessment, vulnerability analysis, disaster risk management, it must be at the local level. And most of our disaster in Malaysia is a localized base. So don't just think of the common type of disaster, but something that considered the future as well. Like today, I think Dr. Matsura in his talk mentioned about the flooding under pandemic, for example. This compound hazard, compound disaster, that should be something that put in mind. Of course, Penang is now in the second phase of the recovery plan, but we never know. Whenever we open the international border, the transmission, the virus transmission and the process can be come back to the previous setup. And second point, she was also mentioning about the powerful of engaging the locals and experts, to get the input. I think this also excellent example, not only at the vertical, but also horizontal relationships, from the federal, state, district, cross agency, cross ministry. And she was also addressed the importance of these multi partnerships, public, private, academia, and civil society. That's something that we would like to pick it up. And number three, integrating traditional, once again, not only the traditional knowledge, but also scientific knowledge. This also additional uniqueness of her presentation today. I think something that can be one of the key messages of today's event. And of course, this traditional and scientific knowledge can be easily convince the investor, policymakers, disaster managers into the DRR. And number four, she was mentioning specifically about improving our risk communication scheme at the local level. I hope I heard many times from Dr. Ang that she would be contacting Haslinda. This is something that we wish, how does the technical scientific knowledge can be used by the local practitioner. And we are talking about user-friendly tool, multi-sources platform, decision-making process for action. And last but not least, one of the major output from her master's study on the integrated flood hazard maps. So she's also currently working on papers, a couple of papers, Q1 papers, to publish this process so that everybody can sign and use it locally. And interesting part, the last content, I think is very important to co-develop, co-design this, what we call it, local DRR and resilience strategies aligned with the national DRR strategies. So all these important elements, from the hydrodynamic modeling into the local mapping, traditional knowledge, community input, the powerful of communication, dynamic visibility, cartographic, plus with political will, committed DRR investments towards promoting this risk-informed sustainable development. That's something that we pick it up not only during the presentation, but also during her Q&A session. I'm running out of time. Just want to go to the last part by Dr. Ang. I think she's also presenting very exciting process, understanding like 500 years, 300 years of historical values and put it in the context of Georgetown. And she started with not only thinking of Georgetown by itself, but also the other part of the area, touristed area in Penang, and it must be spatially connected. That's how the disaster risk management, disaster risk assessment come into the place. We are spatially connected, so easy to promote and protect some of our cultural heritage, tangible or intangible value. A second point, she was mentioning about the heritage site. Managing is not easy. She developed small teams. I think some of them are here today. Thank you for your great support from Georgetown Heritage Incorporated team, despite a short notice, but I think Dr. Ang gave an excellent presentation. From the policy, institutional framework to the technical assessments and the data, I think that's something easy to follow. And the words that I put it here, local empowerment in many ways, whether you are from the agency like bomber, fire and rescue departments, or from the local council, in many ways. So ideally, we would like to explore cost-effective way to manage to secure the safety of the people and preserve the asset. Number three, something I pick it up is translating policy into local action. We can develop many policy, many guideline, many so-called framework, but I think it's up to the local practitioner how to translate it. So the process of translation, sometimes we need a various type of knowledge and understanding. So I think she successfully managed to convince the audience into how actually the SOP can be easily implemented locally, and she shared some of the evidence from the field. And something that I'm happy to highlight as well, number 4, the level of awareness, the process of building the societal resilience, not only at the district, at the Georgetown level. So we are talking about 200 and almost 260 hectare of the area of interest. But I think she highlighted the downscaling factors, until at the individual level. So I think self-help, mutual help work pretty well here. And last but not least, I hope there's a significant improvements or adjustments into this current special area plan, because we are talking about putting the right policy in. So then we can easily translate those policy into action later on, and mainstream cross-check with some of the current ongoing policy. I think that's it. Of course, this process, the key messages, Professor Okubo, Ms. Haslina, and Dr. Ang, we will put it in the context of knowledge notes, and we hope that we can distribute this event, then we can upscale the positivity of the event. Yeah. So I come back to the last part of my session, and we are running out of time. Just a couple of minutes to close my session. On behalf of MGIT UTM, we have invested, we are interested to pursue in this particular field. Yeah, so we presented to the state last couple of years, and we met the several local managers, policymakers, and we come up with these, at least suggested these practical methods to develop. Why it's so important? Because it's listed as one of the global target under Sendai framework. And today, Teams is renewing our commitments. Like it or not, we don't have any example or benchmark for local DRR strategies. I hope the Penang State and of course under this GTWHI can take a lead, and with the great support of DID and some technical agency, we can come up with our own version of local DRR and resilience strategies or specific plan. I'm not going to go in detail, but it's listed here, and we translate it. And 6 recommendation, we presented this last last year and last 2 years to the state to develop the local DRR strategies, but that's number 1. Number 2, we have to keep on strengthening, searching, championing these local actors, and improving, of course, the risk communication as mentioned by Ms. Haslinda. But I think, like it or not, we have to have multi-impact, multi-hazard impact-based early warning system in the future, since the island itself is vulnerable not to one type of disaster, but it's multi-tier of impact, frequency and magnitude of natural and biological hazard. Number 5 and 6, we are talking about risk repository and investing in DRR. Well, that's a couple of slides before I end my sessions. I think every single of us today have specific roles and responsibility. I think as academicians, as researchers, scientists, I think these platforms provide also a better clue how we can connect, the missing dot, how we can build a strong connection between local practitioner and also policymakers, disaster managers, as well as scientists. So given the complexity of the current risk in island setup, like in Penang. I think we have to work together, and hopefully we can design some of the, I think DPPC is willing to support the process together with Institute of Disaster Mitigation for Urban Cultural under Professor Okubo. Hopefully we can co-design some of the project, some of the activities in the future after pandemic end. And I'm also happy to mention that this event is partly designed under the Masters of Disaster Risk Management, one of the flagship program under MJIT, UTM, with the great support of JICA. And recently we get this recognition among the top hundreds in the world under this environmental security. That's congratulations to all parties, MJIT, course coordinators, program coordinators, and implementers. Let's come back a couple of minutes before we end. So today we have this Sendai 2030 DPPC webinar series. So I think since 2015, DPPC taking a great significant step to support the process. And it's not easy, but I do believe with great support. And today we have seen how this such platform can be easily designed, a proper ways of project, programs, training, field practice in the future. I hope that we can utilize this regional network, and we hope that we can Sendai indicators, 7 global target, and also a global agenda 2030. Yeah, that's it for me, Dr. Siti Uzaria. I think I end my sessions today. Sustainable development be achieved. And just before we close, I think I would like to make announcements that this afternoon at 3 o'clock, 3 p.m. we have another webinar. Those who are interested to learn from 2 decades from Indonesia, earthquake, cascading geohazard, and also how does this impact to society, economic, and also future developments. Please join us, and I hope that we can leverage this platform. With that, I think I close the session. On behalf of MJIT, DPPC, UTM, we would like to thank to all speakers, panelists, for your commitments, Professor Okubo, Ms. Haslinda, and also Dr. Ang. Thank you very much. I hope that we can come up with something concrete in the near future. Of course, Dr. Sohim Matsura, thank you very much for your great support. I absolutely, JICA Expert Office, I think, can make some initiative, follow-up initiative after this pandemic. And I do hope that Georgetown can be our ground work, like we can utilize some of the Ms. Haslinda study and translate into practice and upscaling it. And last but not least, I would like to take also this opportunity to thanks to all committee, organizing committee who tireless working and make sure that this event successfully implemented and organized. So once again, thank you, our moderator, Dr. Siti Uzaria, and all MDRM students, our alumni, strategic partners. Please do contact us. We are happy to communicate, to initiate a new ways of collaborations, partnerships, and hopefully we can support the process of achieving the global target, inshallah. So with that, I think I close this session. Assalamualaikum and have a great day. Perhaps Dr. Siti, we have a short group photos, yeah?
Yeah, we will have group photo only for the panel in this Zoom. And I invited also Dato Engineer Sabri to join us, and also Associate Professor Dr. Sohim Matsura. Can you also? Okay. Okay, Megat, maybe you can arrange how can this photo session show. You please do something with the view.
Okay, so I will take a screenshot. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, can you give thumbs up? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you.
Okay, arigatou gozaimasu, and thanks to all. Thank you very much to all panels. So hope to see you another time after the pandemic over.
Thank you
Yep.
so much.
Thank you,
Thank
Dato'.
you. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Arigatou gozaimasu. Please stay
Assalamualaikum.
safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Sensei.
Salam.
Terima kasih Datuk Sabri.
Thank you, Dr. Kamarul. Thank you, Dr. Siti. Thank you, organizer.
Terima kasih. Terima kasih Dr. Ang. Thank you Prof. Okubo. Terima kasih.